Making this video as evidence that I do have cervical instability caused by damaged ligaments. Because a lot of neurosurgeons I've talked with, they look at my MRI and they see that it looks fine, which it does, and they say there's not enough to go on to say like that I have damage, even though I do send them to my digital motion X-ray, but they're more accurate than MRIs at diagnosing cervical instability and ligament damage. So if you have an MRI that has 2 ligaments and they're damaged, like it shows 2, the DMX of the same person would show like 7. Like the DMXs are way more accurate than the MRIs for diagnosing instability and ligament damage. Doesn't mean MRIs are pointless, but it's just specifically for that thing. So I've got Dr. Postlewaite says I have severe cervical instability caused by ligament damage, ALL, transverse, alar, longitudinal. Well, I guess ALL is the anterior longitudinal ligament, but I think posterior as well. And then Dr. Papas injected all the ligaments in the back of my neck that weren't C1 and C0. Like he and every single one he said was moderate to severe damage, and like as if someone had been in a major car accident. Like, so he wanted to inject blood into them, and they just absorbed it like a sponge. And normally they resist it because its ligaments are tightly bound fibers, and it's difficult to inject fluid in, like blood, into them. And mine just accepted it like a sponge. And so very clearly to him, I have ligament damage, and then he would agree I have systemic connective tissue damage, as I've got problems in every single joint in my body, and I mean literally every single joint in my body. I have damaged connective tissue. And he has also seen my DMX and agrees that it is highly likely that given my instability and pain and the fact that I'm in bed 23 hours a day and my life is hell, and I have severe neurological problems like hot flashes, vertigo, random pains throughout my body, and heart palpitations based on head movement that also indicates likely my C1 squashing my brainstem. And he would agree that I very likely also have much more severely damaged upper cervical ligaments, like capsular and alar, transverse, and those that I mentioned. And Dr. Centeno and Dr. Schultz have both looked at my digital motion X-ray and concurred that I have ligament damage in my upper cervical, enough to warrant PICL, which I'm going for in August. And then Dr. Kleinman also, he's a chiropractor in Port St. Lucie, and he believes I have connective tissue problems throughout my body, that I'm 100% disabled. He's written me a letter of disability as I'm in bed 23 hours a day due to connective tissue problems. He's adjusted my atlas. It doesn't hold. It just goes right back to where it was because nothing's holding it in place. The alar is not doing its job because it's severely damaged. Dr. Pancake is also a chiropractor who said the same thing. My primary care provider also believes I need to see a neurosurgeon. Dr. Papa, if Vero Orthopedic, believes I need to see a neurosurgeon. I went to the ER and they said that they can't help me and I need to see a neurosurgeon for my upper cervical problems. And what else? I also have issues like with laying, like when I lay down, I get like these jolts, like electric shocks through my body, which is also a hallmark of upper cervical instability, loss of cervical curve, which is also a hallmark of connective tissue damage in the neck, and my C1 is squashing my internal jugular veins, which is also evidence of cervical instability, typically transverse ligament damage, allows the C1 to move more forward. And I've got I was also likely exposed to mold and Lyme, which I'm getting tested for this week. But I was in a basement before this started, and I was lethargic for about 4 months, had heart palpitations, and they found right before I left. I was there for about a year and a half. Before I left, we found that there was black mold under the red carpets in the basement, and then I was also in the woods a lot, and it was on a farm, and I got bitten by a lot of ticks. And then since then, my connective tissue has been going downhill. So unless like my upper cervical problems, like area is the only part of my body that isn't been damaged, then it is also very likely affected by that connective tissue problem, by Lyme eating or causing damage to my connective tissue. And then also I can't stand and hold my head up on my own. I physically like can't do it without a brace. It's impossible. My head just starts to sink and fall backwards because nothing's holding it up, and I can't force it up with my own muscles. I physically can't hold it up. It just slides backwards uncontrollably. It's like my head's not attached, and it's been getting progressively worse. I've been in bed since February, and it just keeps getting worse. I was 175 pounds, now I'm 147 pounds. And the reason I'm making this video is because if and when I talk to doctors, they don't listen long enough for me to explain this. So I have to say this all in one so that like they can hear it and rewind, go back, whatever. And I mean, if I don't have craniocervical instability caused by severe ligament damage, and if I wouldn't be helped by PICL and or craniocervical fusion, then no one in the world would be. Because I am the textbook example of someone that has severe upper cervical ligament damage. And I know my MRI doesn't show it, but the problem is with the MRI, not with the diagnosis. The MRI doesn't really show my upper cervical ligaments, and that is the problem. So if a neurosurgeon was to look at my MRI and not see like ligament damages because you can't see the problem. So it would be acceptable to say, I can't see the problem based on this MRI. We got to do some additional imaging and try and figure out what the problem is, and try to capture it better in an MRI before we do any kind of surgery. That makes sense. But saying to me like, hey, like I don't see any problem. There's not like a problem. What you're saying isn't a problem. That's not true. That's not the case. So, yeah, that's it.